So I'll go into a little bit about my background first, and then I'll talk on the topic, which is ADHD in the workplace. Chances are that everyone here is affected in some way or knows someone who has ADHD or is affected by ADHD. My story is, I am someone, despite my very youthful appearance, I'm old, I'm in my 50s. I got my diagnosis later in life when I was age 48. And what came about it for me was right around the pandemic time, I had a hard time turning my brain off. And at the time, my wife said to me, we got to figure this out. Like we can't deal with this anymore. We got to figure this out. So what did I do? I went to, and I worked with Kaiser. Unfortunately, because it was the pandemic, it took a little while to actually go in and meet with a psychiatrist. But I met with a psychiatrist and I got my official diagnosis. They have something called the DSM criteria where they say, okay, you meet these many standards, you have ADHD. And I said, okay, great. Yeah, I kind of figured I probably had that. But the other thing that they did was, okay, and here you go, here's your prescription for Adderall, good luck. And I thought, great, this is gonna solve all my problems. And it actually did not. It's something that I hated it. It started making my brain more foggy. I really didn't understand what I was doing. And that's when I learned all about everything else that could be involved. And what you could learn about mental health is there's a whole lot more. One of the things that I've learned now over the years is a great line, which is that pills don't teach skills. And so, I was looking, I remember right before I started taking the Adderall, I was looking at this prescription bottle and like crying, thinking like, oh, this is the solution, this is it. And I was disappointed. But for me, the lights really turned on, no pun intended. But the lights turned on for me once I picked up a book called ADHD 2.0 by Dr. Ned Hallowell. And that's where I learned there was a whole lot more to things with ADHD than what we all think, which is how to pay attention to a boring presentation. So I appreciate everyone here. The doctor's name of the book? Dr. Ned Hallowell. It's called ADHD 2.0 is the name of the book. Great book, because it taught me a whole bunch of different things about ADHD where I thought, I was just not paying attention to a boring presentation, my mind drifting when I'm in college, managing my day-to-day calendar, like that's all I thought it was. But I learned there's a whole host of other things that are involved, which are emotional regulation. How do I regulate myself? I can go into a spiral on things if something negative happens. Executive functioning, which is sort of the CEO of the brain, to be able to manage things. And that there's also things such as my balance. I was always clumsy and I was off, I had a hard time balancing myself. And those are all kind of tied into conditions with what I'm dealing with ADHD. So I decided to really kind of invest and spent probably about 1,000 hours just educating myself on these different topics about ADHD and just learning about more myself. And in that time, now I became a certified coach. I've worked with over 1,400 individuals on a one-to-one basis to just kind of help them live a more intentional life, because there's a lot of things that we could do that I didn't know we had. There's things that, and so what I'm creating right now, so I've been working with people on a one-to-one level to coach them. But what we're creating now, and I'll talk more about this in my presentation, is a product called Dose, which is a software to help people, give them a coach, an ADHD coach right in their pocket. But we're getting started with that. We have a team. My co-founder is here, but she had to step out for a minute to take a call. Her name is Lauren, and I'll introduce her when she comes back in. But the topic today I wanted to talk about was ADHD in the workplace, and just kind of understanding that. Thank you so much for propping up our projector here. 83% of business leaders today, and this comes from a study that Lyra Health did on the state of mental health in 2026, but 83% of business leaders are unsure how to support what's called neurodivergent employees. So neurodivergent, you think of ADHD, what I'm talking about, autism kind of falls into what's called neurodivergence. Dyslexia, which I also learned I also have, falls into that. So 83% of leaders, they're not sure how to support that. And here's some of the things. So what is ADHD? And I apologize, hopefully the handouts will help. But what is ADHD? It's not a character flaw. It's not a lack of effort. It's a different operating system. So, a lot of people think that the world, unfortunately, is built like a linear, like point A to point B, where a lot of times my brain will go from point A to point C, maybe to point D, then back to point B, and then I finish it up. And I have a very non-linear way of thinking that, and I didn't understand that. So, a couple of things to point out here. A lot of common misperceptions that we hear is, well, you just need to try harder. I always remember growing up, my dad would say, your sisters are overachievers and you're an underachiever. Just try harder. Why can't you concentrate? And not understanding that really what I'm dealing with is a mental health condition and something that I'm struggling with. So it's neurobiological. Effort can't just override this. It's something more there. And then nowadays you always hear everyone has a little ADHD. Well, ADHD is a clinical condition. It's not necessarily a spectrum that everyone sits on, but it is something that affects 5% of the population is what they say. Adults can't have ADHD. So 16 million American adults, this is from 2020, were diagnosed with ADHD. I'm not even in that number because I got my diagnosis in 2020. So that number is just going up, and what we're trying to do is educate and let people learn more about what they're dealing with. People with ADHD can't focus. They can hyperfocus intensely. So when a task, and I'll touch on this here in a second, when a task activates them, we can hyperfocus. There was a time I worked in sales for 20 plus years of my career, and I remember I was working on a presentation, and unfortunately, thank you, Robert, because he asked me to have this done to him yesterday, so I didn't wait until the last minute for this one. But there have been many times I would sit in my car going into a client, and I'm working on the presentation, and I would go in and I would nail it, and it worked great because it was fresh in my mind. I was able to focus and get it done. But then we also stress ourselves out because then afterwards, bringing yourself down because then you're up and you're dealing with that. So we don't like to wait till the last minute, but sometimes we just have to because we can hyper-focus and we can block everything out. So I mentioned building a software. So I'm working with a team now. We're building a software product called Dose. So what is Dose? Dose is a portable operating system for someone with ADHD to use. And we have in there tools for intentional thinking, tools for emotional regulation, like how to bring ourselves down, tool for idea capturing, which is near and dear to my heart. It's called Popcorn. Popcorn is my just quick thought gathering. And how many times where an idea will come to me, I'll pull out my iPhone and put it in my notes section of my iPhone. And the next thing you know, my notes section is this big, I can never find anything. So Popcorn is like my idea capturing mechanism. There's also something built in there called a rejection sensitivity meter. And a doctor that I'm going to quote here, Dr. William Dodson, he invented this term called RSD, or rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And what that is while it's not necessarily an official diagnosis, what that is when we deal with rejection as someone with ADHD, it can hit us really hard. So, you apply for that job and you don't get it. You work really hard to try to get a sale and it doesn't come through. Or you're in a relationship and your spouse, significant other, wife, husband tells you to change something and it could just kind of get you spiraling and reeling in that. And so this is a way, our rejection sensitivity meter is a way to kind of help you cope, but also go back and look at previous episodes when they happened. So Dr. William Dodson, who's been a consultant for our product, said to me, really there's 5 real interest-based topics that activate someone with ADHD. One is you need to be interested. So if you're interested, you're going to be turned on. You're going to want to see what's involved. Secondly, challenge. So you're applying for a job, and then you learn your friend is applying for the same job. Well, I want to beat that person out. And so I want to challenge them. So now I'm challenged. Novelty, something new. I go to a new room. I go on vacation to a new place. And it's great. I love everything. All the sights, all the sounds. It's amazing. And I'm ready to leave, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to come back again next year. You go back again next year. It's like, okay, this is fun. And then I go back the third time, and it's like, okay, I've already seen all this stuff again. But novelty, for some reason, it works. It hits for people with ADHD. And then urgency, like I touched upon, working on something, cramming it in at the last minute. Not to mention passion. I mean, passion is just something that involves, I'm passionate about this product, and it's just something that leans it a lot for me and makes my interest level high up. But what this could mean for your team from a business perspective is just think about that. And you can take away the slides, and thanks to Robert who's recording this, you can hopefully learn some information from that or glean something from this. But if you have a team, task assignment to match that output. Poor performance, sometimes it's just an activation problem that someone's not necessarily turned on to what they're dealing with. And, sometimes rigid structure, trying to have to do things in a certain way. I hated when I worked in sales with David, we had to update our CRM system at the time. It was before Salesforce, sitting there filling out forms just did not work for my brain. I wanted to be out talking to people. I wanted to be out, educating people about the product we were selling, things like that, but filling out little details. So that's putting people in the right place for that. So knowing your team's activators that could immediately be actionable and kind of help you as you structure your team. So ADHD at work, so the challenges we deal with, sometimes time blindness. It's really hard to see this one, I'm sorry guys. Time blindness is losing track of time. So many times a person with ADHD, we think in two ways. We think now and we think not now. And that's it. And if something is 3 days from now, it might as well be 3 years. And I can't explain to you why that is, but that's the concept. And it's just sometimes just understanding that is, it's just accepting that can make a big difference. Task initiation. Sometimes starting something can be impossible. Distractibility. There's actually something called procrastivity, which is I'll procrastinate on something, but I know I have to file my taxes. I know they're due April 15th, but you know what? I'm gonna go clean the coffee cups because that needs to be done. So I'll get something done, but I won't get the thing that I need to get done. So those are some of the things that we do. But the strengths, the hyperfocus, creative problem solving, high energy, that empathy, the risk tolerance, we're really good at those areas. So some practical steps for just managers and teams that I talk about, ask, don't assume, write it down. Definitely, I write everything down. Either I carry my phone with me, I'm old school, I have pen and paper. I have like 5 different books that I have at my desk that I write things down on. But yeah, definitely write everything down. Build in structure, not necessarily surveillance. So, make sure that there's like some sort of structure to it, because people with ADHD brain, we love to do things. However, we need that structure. Even though we don't love it, we need those sort of guardrails to kind of keep us on board. So that's helpful. Also, match the task to the activator, like I showed those 5 activators there. And then explore ADHD specific tools. I mentioned what we're doing with dose, and I'll touch on that here in a second. But also, there's a host of different applications out there. There's some in the mental health market, which is actually a $3 billion mental health application market. Spend was $3 billion last year in the US alone. But there's some great tools like the Calms and Headspaces of the world where you can meditate. That can be really helpful for someone to just calm their brain down. There's also tools. There's also a tool called Inflow, which is an ADHD specific tool. There's an ADHD coaching tool called Shimmer, where you can sign up and you get dedicated to coach. And then our product, which is called Dose, and we have a team now, myself included, of 8 people. Check it out. It's free to check it out for free at getdose.app. We have a promo code called Chamber, and you get 90 days for free. So we got an extended trial. So would love for anyone to check it out, pass it on to their friends, and thanks again for having me today.